I found out my girlfriend had erased me from her life at 3:17 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was lying awake, scrolling through my phone after another sleepless night. We had been together for almost 6 years. Long enough that her face had become part of my daily routine, like coffee or brushing my teeth. That night something felt off. She hadn't answered my messages for hours. Not unusual by itself, but there was a strange emptiness in the conversation. No heart emojis. No random photos of her day. No good night. I opened her Instagram. At first I thought the app was glitching. Every picture of us was gone. The beach trips. The birthdays. The Christmas photos with my family. The picture from the night I told her I loved her. Gone. I refreshed the page 3 times. Nothing. It looked like I had never existed. My stomach dropped so hard I actually sat upright in bed. I texted her immediately. "Did your account get hacked?" No response. Then I checked Facebook. Same thing. 6 years deleted overnight. And for reasons I couldn't explain, before I felt angry, I felt terrified. Because deep down, I knew people don't erase someone like that unless they've already made a decision. And I had no idea what decision she had made. Until then, I thought our relationship was solid. Not perfect. But real. I'm 39 now, and at the time I was 38. We lived together in a small apartment, and had spent years talking about marriage, kids, and buying a house. Our families knew each other. My mother treated her like a daughter. Her father called me son. Everything looked normal from the outside. Looking back, though, there were warning signs. Small ones? Easy to ignore. She had become more protective of her phone. She started taking evening walks alone. Sometimes she smiled while texting and quickly locked the screen when I entered the room. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, she'd laugh. "You're paranoid." And I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Love does strange things to your judgment. You explain away things that would seem obvious if they happened to someone else. I told myself she was stressed from work. I told myself every relationship goes through phases. I trusted her completely. That trust wasn't blind. It was built over years. Which is probably why I never saw the cliff ahead. I kept walking toward it while convincing myself the ground was still solid beneath my feet. The morning after the photos disappeared, she finally replied. One sentence. "I just wanted a fresh start on social media." That was it. No explanation. No apology. Nothing. I stared at the message for several minutes. A fresh start? Who deletes 6 years of memories for a fresh start? I called her. She didn't answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. Later that evening she came home acting strangely calm. Too calm. I asked directly. "Why did you delete everything?" She shrugged. "They're just pictures." That response hurt more than I expected. Those photos weren't just pictures. They were evidence of a life we built together. Proof that we mattered. The conversation ended with her accusing me of overreacting. By bedtime, I almost convinced myself she was right. Almost. But then another detail started bothering me. When she went to shower, her phone lit up. A message preview appeared. Just 3 words. "Miss you already?" No name. No context. Just those words. I felt a cold wave move through my body. For the first time, I wondered if the missing photos weren't the real problem. Maybe they were only a symptom. For the next 2 weeks, I became someone I barely recognized. I watched. I listened. I paid attention. The more I noticed, the worse it got. She started working late several times a week. Weekend errands suddenly took hours. She smiled at messages and turned her screen away. One Friday night she said she was having drinks with coworkers. Around midnight, I checked social media. One of her coworkers had posted a group picture. Everyone from the office was there. Except her. I felt sick. When she came home at nearly 2 in the morning, she smelled like a men's cologne I'd never used. I confronted her immediately. "Where were you?" She looked me directly in the eyes. "With friends." No hesitation. No guilt. Nothing. That confidence made me question myself. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe stress was getting to me. But the doubts kept growing. Every answer created more questions. Every explanation felt rehearsed. I started waking up anxious. I couldn't focus at work. My appetite disappeared. The relationship that once made me feel safe was becoming the source of my fear. And I still didn't know how bad things really were. The turning point came completely by accident. She left her laptop open on the kitchen table while she ran downstairs to collect a package. I wasn't snooping. At least not initially. But a notification appeared. A message. From someone named Ryan. The preview read, "I wish you could stay with me tonight." I froze. My heart started hammering. For several seconds I just stared. Then I opened the conversation. I know some people will judge me for that. Honestly, they can. The relationship was already bleeding out. I was just discovering where the wound was. The messages went back months. Hundreds of them. Photos. Inside jokes. Plans. Declarations of love. I felt physically ill. Then I saw the message that shattered me. "I can't wait until he finally knows. I'm tired of pretending we're just friends." The timestamp was 3 days earlier. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the laptop. When she came back upstairs, I was sitting exactly where she'd left me. The screen was still open. And the look on her face told me everything before either of us spoke. She stopped moving. The color drained from her face. For a moment neither of us said anything. Then she whispered, "You read it." "Not. It's not what it looks like." "Not. Let me explain." Just those 3 words. I nodded. My throat felt tight. "Who is he?" She sat down slowly. "Ryan." As if I didn't already know. I asked the question I was terrified to hear answered. "Are you sleeping with him?" Silence. That silence lasted maybe 5 seconds. It felt like 5 years. Finally she nodded. I remember laughing. Not because anything was funny. Because my brain couldn't process reality. 6 years together. Plans. Promises. Family holidays. All reduced to a single nod. I asked how long. She said 8 months. 8 months. While we shared a bed. While we discussed engagement rings. While she told me she loved me. The room felt unreal. Like I was watching someone else's life collapse. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just sat there staring at the floor while my entire future disintegrated in front of me. The details hurt more than the confession itself. That's something nobody warns you about. You think discovering the affair is the worst part. It's not. The worst part is learning how many lies were required to keep it alive. Every late meeting. Every cancelled plan. Every unexplained absence. Every single one suddenly made sense. I asked her why. The answer still haunts me. I didn't mean for it to happen. I almost lost my mind. 8 months isn't an accident. Thousands of messages aren't an accident. Deleting our photos wasn't an accident. She cried. I cried. At one point we were both yelling. Then neither of us had the energy to continue. I remember asking if she loved him. She looked away. That was answer enough. The shame was overwhelming. Not just heartbreak. Humiliation. I felt stupid. Everyone else had trusted her because I trusted her. Now I questioned every memory we'd ever shared. Were any of them real? Or had I simply been living inside a story she stopped believing long ago? The next few days were chaos. Friends called. Family members noticed something was wrong. Neither of us knew what to tell them. She wanted privacy. I wanted honesty. Eventually the truth came out. My mother cried when I told her. Her father called me and apologized repeatedly. That conversation nearly broke me. Because none of this was his fault. Yet he sounded more guilty than the person who betrayed me. Meanwhile, my girlfriend kept insisting things were complicated. That phrase became her favorite weapon. It's complicated. No. It wasn't. Painful? Absolutely. Messy? Definitely. But not complicated. She chose someone else. Everything after that was just consequences. I stopped sleeping properly. I lost nearly 15 pounds. Some mornings I'd sit in my car outside work, unable to force myself inside. My confidence disappeared. Every mirror reminded me of the question I couldn't stop asking. What was wrong with me? Even now I know that's the wrong question. But heartbreak rarely listens to logic. A week later I learned there was another secret. One that somehow made everything worse. Ryan wasn't some random guy she'd recently met. He was someone she'd known before me. An ex. The ex she always claimed meant nothing. The ex she said she'd completely moved on from. Apparently they'd reconnected online nearly a year earlier. At first it was harmless conversation. Then daily messages. Then secret meetings. Then the affair. The realization crushed me. Because I remembered every time I'd asked about him. Every time she'd reassured me. Every time she'd called me insecure for worrying. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was being lied to. That distinction mattered. For months I'd doubted my own instincts. Now I discovered they had been screaming the truth while I desperately tried to silence them. The betrayal became bigger than infidelity. It became psychological. A slow erosion of reality. The person I trusted most had convinced me to distrust myself. And recovering from that would take far longer than recovering from the breakup itself. The confrontation that followed was ugly. Hours of arguments. Questions. Tears. Defensiveness. At one point she begged me not to leave. At another point she admitted she wasn't sure she wanted to stay. Imagine hearing both statements from the same person. I couldn't understand it. She claimed she loved me. She claimed she loved him too. I remember saying, "That's not love. That's fear of losing options." She cried harder after that. Maybe it was cruel. Maybe it was true. By then I didn't know. All I knew was that I felt trapped between wanting answers and wanting escape. Friends advised me to throw her out immediately. Part of me wanted to. Another part still loved her. That was the hardest truth. Even after everything. Even after the lies. Even after seeing the messages. I still loved her. And I hated myself for it. Because love felt less like comfort and more like a chain I couldn't break. For several weeks we tried to coexist. A terrible idea. Every conversation turned into an argument. Every silence felt hostile. Trust was gone. Without trust, everything becomes suspicious. If she smiled at her phone, I noticed. If she left the room, I noticed. If she came home 10 minutes late, I noticed. I hated who I was becoming. Constantly anxious. Constantly questioning. Constantly searching for evidence. That wasn't me. Or at least it hadn't been before. One evening I finally asked whether she was still seeing him. She hesitated. Again. That hesitation told me everything. The relationship died in that moment. Not because of the affair. Not because of Ryan. Because she still couldn't choose honesty. I realized I was fighting for a version of us that no longer existed. Maybe it hadn't existed for a long time. The next morning I started looking for a new apartment. I cried while packing boxes. Not because I thought I was making the wrong choice. Because I knew it was the right one. Moving out felt surreal. The apartment was full of ghosts. Every corner held a memory. The couch where we planned our future. The kitchen where we danced while cooking. The bedroom where I once felt safest. Now everything felt contaminated. When I carried the final box to my car, she stood by the doorway crying. I almost turned around. Almost. But then I remembered the deleted photos. The affair. The lies. The months of deception. And I kept walking. The drive to my new place felt endless. That first night alone was one of the hardest nights of my life. The silence was unbearable. No television. No music. Just my thoughts. I kept checking my phone. Part of me expected a message saying she'd made a mistake. That she'd chosen us. It never came. Instead, there was only quiet. The kind of quiet that follows an explosion. The damage had already happened. Now all that remained was the smoke. And me standing in the ruins wondering how I'd failed to see the fire sooner. The months afterward were brutal. People talk about healing like it's a straight line. It isn't. Some days I felt strong. Other days a random song in a grocery store could destroy me. I started therapy. Honestly, I resisted it at first. But eventually I realized I needed help. Not because I couldn't survive. Because I didn't want this betrayal to define the rest of my life. The hardest part wasn't losing her. It was losing certainty. I no longer trusted my judgment. I questioned everyone. Friends. Coworkers. Potential partners. Even myself. Therapy helped me understand something important. Trust isn't blindness. It's a choice. And sometimes people betray that choice. Their actions don't automatically mean the choice was wrong. That idea took a long time to accept. I still carried anger. Still carried grief. But slowly, the weight became manageable. Not lighter. Just easier to carry. Like a scar that stops bleeding but never completely disappears. About a year later I heard through mutual friends that she and Ryan were living together. The news hit me harder than I expected. Not because I wanted her back. I didn't. But because it made everything feel final. For months I'd secretly imagined some dramatic realization. An apology. Regret. Closure. Real life rarely works that way. Sometimes people hurt you and keep moving forward. Sometimes they're happy afterward. That reality is difficult to accept. I never got the explanation that satisfied me. I never got the ending that felt fair. Eventually I understood that closure isn't something another person gives you. It's something you build yourself. Piece by piece. Day by day. Even now, if I think too long about those 6 years, I feel sadness. Not for the relationship. For the version of me who believed it was safe. That man trusted completely. The man writing this doesn't. Maybe that's growth. Maybe it's damage. Maybe it's both. It's been several years now. Most days I'm okay. Truly. I have a different life. Different routines. Different priorities. But every once in a while I remember that night. 3:17 in the morning. A glowing phone screen. An Instagram profile with no trace of me. And I realized the photos weren't the betrayal. They were the announcement. She had already erased me emotionally. The internet was just catching up. If there's one thing I still struggle with, it's how quickly someone can become a stranger. One day you're discussing your future. The next you're discovering they built a second life behind your back. Sometimes I wonder whether she ever thinks about what happened. Whether she regrets any of it. I'll never know. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I survived it. Not gracefully. Not perfectly. But I survived. Still, there are nights when I scroll through old backups and find photos she forgot to delete. Pictures of 2 people smiling. Looking happy. Looking certain. And for a few seconds I mourn them both. Because neither of those people exists anymore.